Good afternoon. Welcome to City Council meeting, regular session. I call this meeting to order. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance and remain standing for invocation.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Billy, will you lead us in invocation?
Our Father in heaven, we're grateful to be gathered here together this evening in participation in this community event as our elected officials discuss matters and business pertaining to our general welfare and the quality of life that we hope to have here in our community. We're grateful for this great country that we have that gives us the freedoms to exercise our rights and to express ourselves and to be able to come together tonight. Grateful for those men and women who have made that freedom possible. Grateful for our founding fathers that gave us the Constitution and the ability to organize the way we are tonight. We ask, Father, that Thy Spirit will be with us and specifically with our elected officials as they deliberate and discuss and take action tonight, that action will be in the common good of our community and will help us move forward in a positive way and in a way according to Thy will. We're so grateful for these opportunities, grateful for the moisture that we've received lately, and for this beautiful community that we live in. And we pray for these things in the name of Jesus Christ.
Amen. Thank you, Mr. Dillon. Please be seated. Item number 4, I have one request on speaker's form in reference to discussion item number 2. Mr. Yamamoto, would you wish to wait until we get to that discussion item, or do you want to do it and call to the public?
I can wait.
You can wait? Okay. It'll be better because this way we can converse. Call to the public, you're just going to talk to us and then we can't actually answer anything. All right? It'll be better. Thank you, sir. Is there anybody else in call to the public? Yeah. State your name and your address for the record, please.
Good evening, my name's Linda Rushton. I live at 269 West Loma Street in Nogales. Good evening to the council, the mayor, Mr. Daly. I'm here to spread good news. The Santa Cruz Nature and Heritage Festival has received its nonprofit status from the IRS. Yes.
Yes.
Yes. You know, I was thinking there we might not get it for a while just because of what's going on. I'm here to talk about the Santa Cruz County International Film Festival that will be taking place October 16th through the 19th. We will be having 6 movies, documentaries, speakers, workshops, tours, and a special trip out to the San Rafael Valley to where McClintock was filmed. That is a separate and very special day. They're only allowing us to take 30 people out there. So we will be showing McClintock in the barn, getting a tour of the barn, the house, and the grounds. We'll be having a chuck wagon lunch out there. Transportation will be provided. But we're also showing, and I think most of you got this. If you didn't, I have a few left. And we'll be showing Rage, Bottom of the Bottle, McClintock, Pocket Money, and Broken Lance. And all of these movies were filmed in Santa Cruz County, either in part or in total. Thursday night is a welcome reception dinner at the Americana, and we will have documentaries, speakers from Old Tucson Studios. We will be having a theatrical makeup presentation on Friday, in addition to more documentaries and more speakers. And that is both at the Americana and at the Oasis Theater. On Friday, we will be showing Pocket Money, which was originally written by J.P.S. Brown as his book Jim Kane. And it was then changed into Pocket Money in 1971, starring Lee Marvin and Paul Newman. And Mr. Brown is going to talk about how he felt about having his book turned into that movie. It should be very interesting. Now, Mr. Brown is getting up in years, so we're going to video him. So we have something for the museum and the archives. So I encourage you to attend. All movies, all documentaries, all speakers are free to the public. You can just go on the website, www.santacruzfilm-fest.org, and get a complete rundown of everything that's going to be shown. Friday night is the big gala, and that will be held at the Yerba Buena Ranch House, which was owned previously by Stuart Granger and Gene Simmons. And we will be doing tours, showing Bottom of the Bottle. We will be having speakers. Dwight Thibodeau is going to talk about Georges Simenon, who is the author of Bottom of the Bottle. PJ Lawton from Old Tucson Studios will be talking and running some Santa Cruz film clips. So let me encourage you to attend. With all the movies free and all the documentaries free, and I will put in little parens, there will be a donation box. Just so you know. I think this is a marvelous thing for the county. Now, we're trying to encourage tourism to Santa Cruz County, and we hope that not only the tourists will come down, but also people who live here will share in the experience of the film festival. Thank you.
Thank you, Linda. Thank you very much. Is there anybody else who called to the public? No, hearing none, we'll continue. Item number 5, discussion items. Number 1, presentation status of Nogalitos drainage project. Mr. Dilly?
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, thank you for this opportunity. Mr. Valdez, Santa Cruz County Public Works Director, is here with us, as well as a consultant involved in the Nogalitos drainage project and effort. Here to represent and give the project and give you as a council an update on the status of that project. So without further, let's turn it over to Mr. Valdez.
State your name and address for the record, please.
Jesus Valdez, County Engineer. Thank you for the opportunity. Mr. Mayor, members of council. Today we're going to have a presentation, as Mr. Gilly said, about the Nogalitos project. Before we start, Scott, our engineer, with Timley Horn, he's going to go over that. Before we start, we're just going to bring up some issues that have to do with the land itself, where we're planning to do the construction. At first, when I approached the landowner, he indicated that he was for the project, and he was willing to give us an easement so we could do the project and maintain it. He called me a couple of weeks later and he said he would want an easement that was extinguishable for the purpose of future development. I checked with our attorney and our manager. We're a little hesitant, but I think it still could be done. Then that's something that the city would have to consider if we're willing to take that chance. So without, at the end of when Scott gives his presentation, we can talk about construction and what kind of options we have for that.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, go ahead,
If
Mr.
we
Dilly.
could, Jesus, I'm wondering if we could just spend a minute on that particular issue then, either now or at the end of the presentation, because if I'm not mistaken in what you said, the owner is interested, or at least tentatively interested in working with our agencies with an easement, but something that's not permanent.
Correct.
What was the term you used?
Extinguishable?
Extinguishable? And is that something that's acceptable? Would that be something acceptable to the flood control district?
We're, like we said, we're a little hesitant because once you build something, you want to have assurance that it will be there forever.
Well, in fact, property owners, after you build it, property owners are going to, and understandably so, have a sense of confidence and reliability that that's going to be there in how they approach their own properties and the development and all sorts of stuff, right?
Sure. I'll also mention that he said that if he were to develop that piece of land, that he would take care of the drainage. So that's what was communicated to me.
Legally, is that something that can be done in the easement?
I brought it up to
The language of the
our
easement?
attorney,
Okay.
and like I said, we're a little bit hesitant, but I think we can do it.
What about for insurance purposes? Wouldn't that?
Just superficially, I mean, right on the, right from, right on the top, without having the benefit of all the information, I would feel very leery about going into,
But what I'm saying is that if you develop a retention pond
Yeah,
and assures that area that they will not be under the, say the FEMA mapping is arranged or something in reference to the insurance, wouldn't there be something there, Mr. Machado, legal that, in reference to how much you're gonna pay insurance?
You
Yeah,
mean
for
in
flood
terms of
area.
future liability?
Yes.
Well, it would all depend, and I'm sure your attorney said the same, what type of language is included in the easement,
right.
and under what conditions it could be extinguishable. And that would affect what you have future liability.
And on the,
During the time that the retention pond is in effect, that will maybe affect the FEMA maps, but I don't know, depending on what's there and what's not there.
but Mr. Machado, when you talk about extinguishable, is, when you draw up a contract, does it say it's gonna be extinguished 10 years from now, 20 years from now, or is it just whenever that person wants to develop?
It all depends what the language of the easement says. It could be extinguishable at will, 30-day notice, 5 years, 10 years. I mean, it all depends what the agreement is between the property owner and the district.
Vice Mayor?
It still goes back to the city. I mean, if they're gonna develop out there, the city's gonna direct what has to be done or not. Especially the flood district they would direct what would have to be done with any changes. And obviously, if they wanna develop it, there's gonna have to be huge changes. So, I mean, they still have to go through the city, they still have to go through the county. And what the gentleman there that says he would develop it, obviously, he's gonna do development. All this has got to be taken into consideration. It's gotta go to the city. The city doesn't have to approve any changes. It may just stay forever like that, right? But if he's gonna go ahead and develop the area, we're still in the driver's seat, and so is the district, the flood district.
Well, no, not necessarily, because it all depends what your developmental standards are. And if he meets those standards, then he can develop it.
Everybody
And I think,
standards.
but the hesitancy here is in investing so much time, effort, and resources in an improvement where you don't control totally. And again, that depends on the conditions that the district would put on and what the landowner would be willing to accept. I mean, if they're agreeable to both, then you can do it, there's ways to do it, but it all depends. I mean,
What
the shorter.
options?
The only way we're gonna have 100% control is if we buy the property. That's the only way we'd have 100% control. But that doesn't mean that he's willing to sell it. So in other words, the other side of the coin is, don't do anything. Leave it like that for the next 50 years. Maybe it won't be developed for the next 50 years. But I mean, we spent a lot of time, and I've spent a lot of time trying to get this thing done. I mean, again, it's all coming back to the city and the flood district. I mean, we're not gonna, if the way it is right now, all the water is being channeled a certain way, they can't change it arbitrarily. The water's still gonna come down, am I correct or not? They can't change it. So I mean, it's still gonna have to go through whatever is there now, right? Unless the guy says, well, let's flood the Perkins Street area, which
Well,
may
you know,
not be, you know.
Vice Mayor,
Be
you
bold
know,
for that.
Mr. Machado, the Vice Mayor might be right there. The reason, you know, when he's talking about development is because you're right, because if they're gonna start developing and they present a plan for the development, they're gonna have catch basins and retention ponds themselves.
Exactly, they're gonna have to
For
do
the
it.
area. Because otherwise, you know, we do that for almost everybody. Well, actually, John Hayes through the flood district does that. You're right, maybe it could be something right now, but if he wants to develop, he's gonna have probably to be confronted with that issue down the road.
Sure.
The developer is.
So,
Won't
Mr.
he?
Mayor, maybe we can get through the bulk of this presentation and figure
Yeah.
out what options there might be.
Proceed, go ahead.
And Mr. Red, just to address some of your concerns,
Yeah,
none of the homes are in the floodplain.
okay, perfect.
With that, I'll turn it over to Scott.
Even if we have 100-year flood in the cañon. Look what Interstate 10 said in Phoenix.
I know.
They're not in the floodway and there were 10 feet of water.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor,
Go ahead.
members of council, Mr. Manager, Madam Clerk, Mr. Machado. As Jesus said, I'm here to kind of give you an update about the Nogales drainage project. And so we'll start by just giving a little bit of background, project location. These blue lines represent the water courses that go into the Nogales area, also known as the Berry Track subdivision. And the green lines represent the watershed, or the area that contributes the flow to the subdivision. There's your project area. Just to give you some reference, there's War Memorial Stadium, and there's your international boundary. So these, the larger of the two watersheds starts all the way back at the international boundary. This is to give you a little bit of more background on the a zoomed in look at the project area. So the main street that we're talking about here in our study is Durango Street, Veracruz, Edwards, and Lincoln. I can't remember the name here, but this is the Grant. Yeah, this is a high point here, as you probably all are familiar with. So basically, the flow comes into the subdivision and has no means of conveyance other than the streets. And so what we've depicted here, and I just want to clarify, Mr. Valdez said that there is no FEMA regulatory floodplain. There is a local floodplain. We've delineated it here based on standards, but this is not a regulatory FEMA that wouldn't utilize this for flood insurance purposes, but it's for illustrative purposes. So this is what the floodplain kind of looks like today, and you can see that it comes down Durango, Veracruz, it breaks out in a couple places. I've got a couple extra arrows here to show where we believe it also breaks out. There's a low spot on Lincoln here, and it's a very challenging floodplain to even depict because it's going a bunch of different directions. I want to tell you a little bit about the scope of what we're doing. We're calling this Phase 1 drainage. And let me go back here. Phase 1, we're dealing with the Durango Street watershed. Veracruz, at this point in time, we're not proposing anything. It is the smaller of the two watersheds. It generates a little less than half of what the Durango Street watershed generates. So when we're talking about Phase 1 drainage, we're talking about an improvement at the end of Durango. So we started off by doing some feasibility on a detention basin at the east end. And we're in that process right now, and we're very close. We're somewhere close to producing 50% plans, as you can see, middle of October. But we have enough that we felt that we could present to you tonight. And then where we go from there is by the end of the year, we should have 100% plans for construction. So they would be shelf-ready plans without any identified construction funding. Moving into some constraints that guided us as we went through this study, it's real important to point out that the street grades are really flat. When we're talking about Veracruz and Edwards, 0.3%. This is not, a grade that we would design a street at today. The minimum is 0.5%, and so as a result, the streets don't convey drainage very well. They do have curbs, so they do have some capacity, but they just don't convey a lot of flow. Reconstruction of the streets is really not an option because it impacts so many things. It would affect driveway access. You could imagine all of the driveways along there having to be retied in. There would be issues with the slope of those driveways. And also you've got sewer and utilities in those roads. So lowering the road is really not an option either because it impacts the sanitary sewer, and sanitary sewers run in gravity. And so there are some constraints, and we want to illustrate that we looked at is there anything we could do with the road or within the road without doing this basin. The other very important takeaway point from this constraints is that there's not enough cover or fall, and fall is a technical term, and I'll try to explain it, but cover over a pipe, you have to have a certain amount of cover over a storm drain pipe, and you have to have a certain amount of slope to get a storm drain to work, and neither of those exist under these roads because of their flat nature. There's no clear path to the Nogales Wash where runoff ultimately reaches. And then property at the east end of Durango is privately owned, as Jesus already mentioned. And then last but not least, significant bedrock and topography are limiting how large the basin can be. If you're familiar with that area, you'll probably, you'll probably identify with the rock outcroppings that can be seen. So this is an illustration of the design concept. This is Durango Street here, so this would be the last row of houses along the east boundary. What we're showing here is a footprint of what a basin might look like. At least this is the concept that we've modeled that we're presenting our results on, that we feel is an acceptable concept. This red line is the top of the basin, so that's where it would terminate. I've shaded the bottom, kind of, it probably looks yellowish. That would be the bottom of the basin. This green line just represents that's the toe of a berm, okay? And so we have a berm that's built or proposed all along that subdivision boundary. And then our outfall, because we have to be able to drain this, because we can't completely retain everything. Retaining an entire storm would take a much, much bigger area. So we have to let some flow out. This is looking in cross-section. If you were to cut a cross-section from west to east, there's a pretty good hill slope that goes up, and then the Durango Street properties would start right about here. Here's the berm that I was talking about. We would have pipes as outflow that would empty into the street. Same as today, flow goes into the street. It would be metered or controlled. We're also illustrating the depth of water behind the berm. And we're also illustrating that we have to cut quite a bit into that hillside there. In order to get the volume there's two ways you can potentially do that. One is you can take your berm higher, the other is cutting into this hillside. This berm, as it gets taller, has to get wider, and then it starts, so there's a balancing act there. We feel we're at a pretty decent height. As you can see, it's pretty wide, and for good reason. Lost my pointer here. There it is. It's pretty wide, so as it would go up, it would have to get wider, and then you lose capacity. So we're doing a little bit of both, berm and some cut into the hillside. This is an elevation view. If you were at the end of Durango Street and you wanted to look east at what the berm would look like. Now this is not three-dimensional, but there would be 3 pipes that would be outletting into the street. There would be what we call hand-placed grouted riprap, which is a nice placing of rock. It's not dumped. It looks generally pretty nice. And then you have an emergency spillway. All basins have emergency spillways. And it's approximately about 8 or 9 feet to the top of berm. The water surface itself only gets about 6 feet. This is because we're concentrating flow and we're also continuing to utilize the streets, this is an improved street cross-section that's included in our cost estimate. This is a valley gutter. You've probably seen valley gutters before in the center of the street. They provide a means for the low flow channel to travel down the roadway without eroding the pavement out. Roads that don't have these valley gutters tend to erode a lot quicker or deteriorate. So we have a valley gutter in the center, and then we've got a cross slope, so you can see that most roads would go up to the center and back down. That's called a crown roadway. This is called an inverted crown, and so it's going down to the center so it can convey a little more flow. This should be comfortable for people backing out of their driveway and not worrying about bottoming out. So I've given you some illustrations of what we're proposing, and then I want to describe what some of the benefits are. There's a lot of numbers on here, so let me just explain. We've got some different intervals of design storms. The one you probably hear a lot about is the 100-year, and that's because usually that's what's regulated by FEMA, local agencies. But we have 10-year, 25, 100, and 500-year storms that we're looking at, and we want to give a picture of what the impact of this basin is. So the 10-year storm, you have about a 44% reduction in flow. This CFS is cubic feet per second. That's how we measure stormwater flow. Even for the lowest storms, which are going to occur more frequently on a frequent basis, we've got a 44% reduction, which is pretty good, pretty significant. As you get larger storms, you actually even get a better reduction. So that's the main benefit, is we're talking about reducing, attenuating the flow that's currently impacting the subdivision. So this is a cross-section of the road, a hydraulic cross-section. Obviously this is vertically exaggerated in scale, but this blue line here represents the proposed water surface after the basin. But without the basin, the water surface is up here above the street and above the sidewalk going into neighboring properties. The streets vary as you go through the subdivision. We want to point out that in a lot of cases, the 10-year is contained within the curb. 5 and 10 year, you have a 44% reduction in flow. The 100-year is 6 feet. 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 6 and in some cases, even the 100 years contained within the street along portions of Greenville. But we need to be clear that this is not going to completely dry up. It's going to improve. There will still be flow down the road. We're reducing it significantly. There will be some areas that flow still gets out of the street, but it will be a vast improvement from existing conditions. Cost estimate. We put this together at a 50% level, and at 50% there's still some unknowns, so there's a lot of contingency in here. We have a contingency factor of 20% right now. The construction costs by themselves, $650,000, $130,000 for unknowns at this point in time. As we learn more and advance these plans, the contingency comes down. Bottom line, this is a difficult basin to construct from an excavation standpoint because of the presence of bedrock. We can see some of the exposed bedrock. We're doing some geotechnical tests on it right now to determine how hard it is, whether it can be ripped out with equipment, standard equipment. So we'll know a little bit better, but the costs right now are high because we anticipate this is not your normal excavation of the basin. Is that the last slide? So with that, that's a glimpse of where we're at and the cost estimate we're at right now. We'll entertain any questions. Or Jesus, do you want to field questions?
Sure. Thanks, Mayor.
Just a question, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a question here, we keep talking about excavating. What if we were to put a concrete barrier on top of what's there to hold the water? I don't want to call it a dam, but I mean, what would be the problem there? You eliminate all the excavation and probably eliminate half the cost.
There's a certain height, and I want to say it's about 20 feet, and I don't know that we're going to get anywhere near that, but a dam is a different entity. It's regulated by DWR.
So that's why I didn't want to call it a dam.
Well, certain risk. I mean, you're right now where we have the water surface at 6 feet. You can guarantee that if there was ever a problem, you're not going to have a wall of water more than probably about 4 feet that's leaking that.
If you did it in layers where it would go from one to another detention and then another detention to where it would eventually just flow, you keep holding water down anyway, it doesn't have to go 20 feet high.
Repetitive basins or chain basins, I think the issue is, our understanding was that we needed to be confined down here because it is a private property owner, and assuming that the more that we encroach in, that probably the likelihood of us being able to use more of their property is less. At least that was my understanding. We did have an original concept that we started with, and so we were only looking at the bottom area here.
One of the problems, the first time it rains there, we get a lot of garbage coming through. Now, I don't know if it's coming from on the Mexican side or if it's picking up as it goes along, right? Stopping at the border, I don't know what that would do or not. Maybe, again, like I said, using a 5-step approach at different places where it would slow up the water to the next retaining, whatever you want to call it. Wouldn't it be easier than trying to go ahead and do one big detention pond? Especially, like I said, with excavating costs and all that.
And Scott is correct. When we did present this to the owner, to the landowner, we told them that we're gonna relegate the basin in about this area. He was okay with that. There's a lot of different things you could do, a lot of different things to do. If you were to just put something like a concrete wall, you wouldn't get the capacity. And it'd be a dangerous proposition to do that. This is a very conventional design. We use this in the county. If from your opinion, if it's too excessive in the cost, we could look at other things and design to a smaller storm event.
The cost seems within reason. The cost, $650,000, I think is within reason. I'm just saying, looking at another option of how it could be done, that's, the cost is not, if you come in and said, you know, it's $8 billion, well, then we said the cost is prohibitive, right? But I mean, $650,000, I don't think it's.
Yeah. Yeah, one question, you said, the majority, there's exposed bedrock there. So what kind of drainage would you have, even though after excavating? Would you have would it perk okay? Would it, what would you get? Because you're gonna expect some drainage and some spillway. Isn't that what the retention pond does?
Well,
Basin?
we're calling this detention because the pipes are at the bottom, so there will always be positive drainage. There won't
Okay.
be anything below the lowest pipes. And that's a little bit different. We didn't do any retention primarily because it doesn't really help with your attenuation of big storms, and it can cause mosquito
Okay.
problems.
So those pipes would actually be regulated, be valved, or it's just open pipes?
They're just
The 30
they're just-
inch, was
They're
it?
330 inches, they would be open and unregulated. I mean, there are sometimes trash racks are put on them or whatever to prevent people from going through them.
So you don't-
Those are details that can be worked out, but essentially, no, those are unregulated. They, by themselves, 330 inches, regulate
Okay,
the flow going into that street.
so there would be no water retained behind those pipes after everything?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, I believe the drain time, in other words, the amount of time that water is actually ponded behind that berm is only about 2.7 hours.
Okay.
So you wouldn't have a saturated berm, which is why we can do an earthen berm.
Mr. Mayor?
Go ahead, Mr. Joey.
Scott, the design for the street, was that just Durango?
Right.
Or, and did that, your cost, are those costs just for Durango, or does that go onto Veracruz and Edwards?
It does. It includes reconstructing Veracruz, Edwards, and Lincoln.
To that design?
Yeah, and we're not, at this point in time, not sure exactly how well Lincoln's gonna work out because of it's got a couple low points. So we're still looking at that, but yes, Edwards, Veracruz, Durango. I don't, as a matter of fact, I'm pretty sure Lincoln's not included right now, but we're looking at it to see if there's a way we can do that. Lincoln is more of an alley, it's not as wide. The valley gutter might not be in the center in all places. For instance, it may be up against the curb over here because that's just, we don't have the flexibility to reconstruct curb and sidewalk in people's driveways. So looking at the curb where it is today, that's where it would be after the project, would be new pavement from curb and including the valley gutter.
And so all those distances and those unit costs, that's all factored into here as far as this estimate is concerned?
Yes. We've got 733 tons of asphalt and pretty much the same, cubic yards for aggregate base.
Thank you.
That drainage that you have in Edwards, it's not big enough, I know it's not big enough to carry the loads coming down to the army. But what if another drainage was put up somewhere in that area to alleviate some of that flow?
So we looked at the grate and the storm drain that's currently in Edwards. It's a grate that goes all the way across the street. It only has capacity to take about 20 CFS. And if you recall the number we were looking at, for even the lowest storm, we're looking at, these are the proposed outflows, 110. The problem is upstream of Edwards. You can't get a pipe to go up with appropriate cover. And it also, stormwater underground doesn't like to make 90-degree bends. So you don't get as efficient of a storm drain. So we did acknowledge that storm drain exists in Edwards, but it also, you can't add more flow upstream unless the downstream can handle it. And the downstream storm drain that goes in Perkins, then ultimately does make its way to Nogales Wash is undersized. So we would just be exacerbating an already oversized storm drain.
You know, there's quite a watershed in that area. What's it?
It's pretty good size.
One more question, Mr. Dilly?
Did you guys take a look, Scott, did you guys take a look at the possibility of utilizing that, I guess that would be the north, could you go back to your aerial of the area? You've got Durango, and then just north of Durango, you've got, I don't know what road that is. Is that a continuation of that road?
That's a high road.
Oh, it's really high?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. Makes sense. Thank you.
And I will admit, we didn't explore anything on this watershed this time. Perhaps maybe in a future phase. It's a smaller watershed, so you're not going to get the kind of effect that you would get out of this watershed. But it has similar characteristics. It probably could have a berm, but that wasn't included, in our scope at this time. That would be future phase.
Go ahead, Vice Mayor.
Is this watershed the same one that also goes into Beck Street, or is that completely different? Did you check it out, Beck Street, on,
No.
is it completely different?
It's different watershed. Beck Street is a smaller,
Soto subdivision.
yeah, it's more to the south.
So it's a completely different watershed?
Mr. Dilly, where are we going with this?
I believe Mr. Valdez had requested to come in front of the council just to give you an update on where this project's at and what alternatives they had considered in getting to this point. I think, unless there's significant concerns from the council or input for Mr. Valdez and the flood control district, they proceed on the timeline that they gave us, and we come back at that point when they've got the design complete.
Okay.
Well, I
Go
still
ahead.
have one question on that. Since you're not taking consideration, considering that other watershed that's comes to the Veracruz, how will it affect, say, like a 100-year flood if that area gets flooded and a lot of water comes down that watershed?
It will continue to travel down Veracruz the way it is today, but the benefit is that we've reduced this flow so much that Veracruz from this point and Edwards on down this way will see a significant benefit. Outside of the south end of Veracruz, where we're proposing some valley gutters and reconstructing the road to be a little bit better draining. this phase is not gonna provide those folks from there to Durango really any benefit.
I do have a follow-up question.
Go ahead, Mr.
Kind of off of what Mr. Doyle had asked. The cross-section of the proposed design for the new inverted road with the gutter, is that in anticipation of the flow from Veracruz?
Yes,
So that was all kind of modeled in your plan, assuming that no work gets done on this basin at this point in time?
So there would be help with it. I mean,
yeah, I mean,
certain amount, yeah.
there's an improvement, it'll
Right.
drain better, there's just no reduction of flow.
Yeah, and the big flow does come through Durango.
So members of the city council, proceed with this with staff?
Mr. Mayor, maybe a good question for Mr. Valdez is, are you looking for any particular input from the council at this point?
It's more a meeting to inform you guys of what we're doing. The directions I got from my board, it's when we met last time, is, this is a priority for the city, so I'm proceeding with that direction. So, like what Scott presented, if everything goes right, we'll have plans at the beginning of the year. And then, we could quite possibly start construction sometime next year. We'll have to go through some phases and through some meetings with you guys, but I'm sort of proceeding now.
Yes. So, I want to thank you very much for this, Jesus, and I also want to thank the board of supervisors for allowing you to be part of this and helping us out with this issue there.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Okay, they corrected me, the flood control district.
Flood Control District Board.
Thank you. To me, I look at it the same. Thank you.
Same.
I know, thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yeah. No, actually.
You okay?
Okay, discussion item number 2, discussion regarding citizens' concerns about radiation contamination from border security operations or apparatus. I placed this on the agenda, and I want to thank Mr. Agustini for being here. Thank you, sir, for coming by. And thank you for the residents that are concerned about this. I was approached by a resident recently that is concerned about the radiation, and I have heard about this, and some other people have questioned this, but one of the things is that we expect, of course, that our federal government does the best that they can do. But even if we have one concerned citizen as a council, we should address the issue. We should ask and see what direction we can go with this. And the reason I placed it for discussion and no action is because what I plan to do is ask Mr. Dilly and staff to approach Homeland Security, and so that we can get a detailed idea of the amount or what kind of radiation they have at the port and all the entries or the crossings from Mexico to here. And you know very well that we have thousands of people that come across. Our economies depend on these people that come across. We have hundreds of employees for Homeland Security that work at the port also. And there's concerns when radiation is present. Of course, everybody is concerned, but there's levels of radiation. So I guess one of the things, Mr. Dilly, that I just wanted to mention is that I don't know if Mr. Agustini was here. Would you like to speak on this, Mr. Agustini? Thank you for being here. To tell you the truth.
You're welcome.
Yes, yes.
Thank you for the invitation.
Yes. Mr. Agustini, the reason I didn't, Mr. Agustini, the reason I didn't invite you is because it was going to be discussion, and we're going to talk about it later on.
No, that's fine.
But I'm glad you're here. And after Mr. Agustini, we'll have Mr. Yamamoto that also wants to talk on behalf of this. They're telling me to keep you to 2 minutes. The commander over there in the back is 2 minutes. No, Mr.
Was the commander invited? That's all we want to know.
No.
We want to see the invitation.
So, Mr. Agustini, as you know, I don't know the levels of radiation that you have there, but you know, there's always concerns about that. And the reason I placed it on the agenda myself is because we like to be transparent as a city. And if somebody brings this, whatever item it is to our attention, we as a city, as a council, we should bring it out to the public and get some information, and this is why we're here right now discussing this issue. But if you have something that you can share with us, we would really appreciate it.
Absolutely, Mayor, Councilman, and Honorable Mr. Shane Dilly. Start the conversation right, you know, I just wanted to break the ice. Yeah.
My gosh.
He wanted to break the ice.
Gee, yeah.
The reason I'm here is twofold. The first one is, just to give you information, a study of radiation is going to be a very expensive project for the city, and you're going to be spending a lot of money because it's a very complicated issue to address. And what we, from the Department of Homeland Security, specifically CBP and the Office of Field Operations, would like to offer you, we will fly an expert from Washington, D.C., who has an extensive background, and he has a history of all the research that we conducted throughout the Mexican land border. We contracted a very large company to do this before we even intended to place the imaging systems that we have in place. We will fly that person down here so he can speak to you and the community, and that's something we can talk about later on. And they'll bring the study that they conducted and the exposure, the minimum exposure that people are exposed to when they come to the port of entry. That's the offer that I want to make. So whenever you feel is the best time and the opportunity and the time for us to fly that person to DC, and either a special meeting or a regular city council meeting, we'll do that. We'll facilitate that. That comes from our port director, our director of field operations in Tucson, and from the assistant commissioner. We will provide you with the materials and the study that was conducted by DHS before we even put our imaging systems in place. This is something that you know, we care about the people that come through the ports of entry. We care about employees. Our employees get tested on a regular basis because we have the same concerns that the public may have from the government and from the private sector. So we want to make that offer available. What I have here in front of me is a fact sheet of the most recent imaging system that we installed at the passenger operation division, which for the most part images the private vehicles and the people that are in there. This is a public fact sheet that I'm going to make available and just leave it in your hands.
Thank you.
And it has a lot of information, has a lot of facts that came from the same company that conducted the studies and did some of the research.
Well, Mr. Agustini, you know, I want to thank you very much for offering us this person from Washington to come by, because I think it's important. You know, if the way I look at it, I know very well that they wouldn't put you as an agent and all the other agents in a position where there's radiation at high levels. I know that for a fact. And so if this person can come and tell us that that is safe for you, that you spend all day there at the port and around this apparatus, you know, would be probably something that we could, as a city, could accept. But, you know, I think it'd be best if this person would come and we would have a meeting, and so we could have members of the public ask questions, and for this person to do a presentation. And I do ask that you do that for us, and whenever you and the port director are ready, we can easily set the meeting at that time.
Absolutely. We're going to start working on this tomorrow. We're going to reach out to our, it's called the Non-Intrusive Inspection Division and Headquarters, which handles not just the imaging in the private vehicle section, but we also have other systems in the cargo facility and the pedestrian area that person will be able to explain the research, the exposure, and the impact that it may have or not have on people.
And this study was, that this person did, was it before, the knowledge that he had, that he has, was it before they placed it, or is it a study that they've been doing now with all the agents and everybody coming across since these new scanners have been placed on the board, you know? A study of months or years or whatever it is, I don't know.
Absolutely. Within CDP, we have an office that is called Research and Development. That office contracts with experts in the field, private companies, private vendors, to conduct studies. And it takes, not months, it takes years.
Okay.
So there's data, there's documentation of the study that will be presented to you. So it's not just something that is done quickly.
Yes.
It has a lot of background, a lot of information, a lot of study, a lot of research. So it's something that is also coordinated with the nuclear regulatory division of the U.S. government as well.
So I know it's probably this question or this answer you probably can't answer. Have you had any reports of anybody in relations to the equipment, of anything that physically or health-wise, anybody complain or anything that you know?
No, not at all. What you see when you drive the primary, you see radiation detection portals. And what that does, it detects any radiation from anyone or any vehicle or anything that comes through the port of entry. And then it reports to the supervisor on duty. Each officer carries a radiation detection device under belt to detect and alert the officer.
The levels?
The levels of, there's kind of a dual purpose, is to find out exactly who's coming in with radiation, or if the equipment that we are using reaches a level that may be dangerous for the officer and or the public. So we have a system in place, and the device that we use to confirm radiation is connected to a computer that is connected to a laboratory that is available to us 24/7, and it detects the isotope, which is the actual source of the energy that is being identified at the port of entry.
Mr. Agostini, as any other ports with Mexico from San Diego to Brownsville, have you conducted a study or have you conducted this type of inquiry towards that anybody else is concerned about?
No, this is the first time we have to address government entities, but we really appreciate the opportunity for us to give you that proof in the study, so everyone can be comfortable and feel at ease.
I want to thank you very much, Vice Mayor.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I'd suggest that everybody's agreeable, how about for the meeting in October?
Yeah.
If we could set up maybe for the meeting in October, and that way we could have the public here and everything.
So that'd be the first Wednesday in
Of
October at 6 p.m.
Could that be done, Mr. Agostini?
We're gonna, I don't wanna commit because I need to talk to
Yes.
to our chain of command, but we're gonna give it a good try to get me here for the first meeting. And I can be in communication either with your staff or directly with.
Yeah, you can, with Mr. Dilly, please. The
Honorable
Mr.
Dilly. Absolutely. If I can get through all the layers of the chain of command.
Yes, go ahead.
Mr. Agostini, I was reading here that in order to get it disposed, we have to come through 2,000 times.
That's 2,000 times to reach the level that you are normally
X-ray.
exposed by getting an X-ray at the hospital. And we'll provide you proof in a study.
Well, Mr. Agostini, I wanna thank you very much.
Absolutely.
And I'm glad you're here, and I don't know who called you, but I didn't call you, so.
Actually, I was reading the newspaper and I said,
Oh,
we
that's
better,
what it is. It works,
we better go and provide this opportunity. No,
I guess
you're
it
very
works.
welcome. You're very welcome.
Thank you very much, and just keep us, let us know what's going on, please.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much.
Absolutely. You'll be in the loop.
Thank you very much. Mr. Yamamoto, please. State your name and your address for the record, please.
I'm Marvin Yamamoto, on 1770 West Nogales Drive, Nogales, Arizona.
Thank you.
Previously, I worked as for naval reactors in Idaho Falls as a reactor operator, and it brings up several questions. One is that I don't see any radiation warning signs around the equipment. Normally, you do put out radiation signs. If you look in a smoke detector, it'll have a radiation sign inside of it. So why isn't there any on that facility on Morley? You can walk by it, it looks awful big. And what are the levels they're getting? They're not telling us. I'd like to know what they are. Another thing is they have a van, I guess, that can drive down the street and inspect the cars that are parked along the street. Well, if I'm standing on the street, I'm going to get zapped. And, you know, they're not taking my approval. And that brings up another question. This van can look in your car and in your person too. And isn't that search without a warrant? So, you know, what's the justification for that? And, let's see, what else? Well, you know, I'd like to see the levels of radiation we're getting. And the European Union in 2012, I understood, banned the sort of backscatter scanners from the airports because of safety reasons. Well, they must have had a basis for banning them. So I'd like to hear why it's allowed in the United States and it's unsafe in Europe. And, well, I guess mostly you want to know the levels, how it works, how they determined how much damage or levels it gives you. Actually, I think they're considering what, when you get it, this backscatter, I think the dose you get to your skin is somewhat higher than the whole body. So I think they're not, you know, the skin dose is more dangerous than the whole body. If you go by whole body, the dose is a lot less. So you might damage the skin or cause more cancers with the radiation that you get. So,
You know, and you brought up some real good points, you know, because having the expert here that you know, that can come from Homeland Security to express this, maybe like Mr. Ostini said, this hasn't been brought up by any port from San Diego to Brownsville, and Nogales is the one that brings it out and conducts a good study and conducts something that the rest of the ports and everybody that comes across from Mexico and everybody that goes from here to Mexico feels safe and feels comfortable with that apparatus. You know, I hope that from here in Nogales is where we determine if it's safe or not. But I know that every time we talk radiation, we never want to think it's safe.
well,
You know, we can't think it's safe. If it
any
goes through your
radiation
body
is
and it
bad.
comes, yeah, if it goes through your body and comes
That's
out on the other
better.
side, it's not safe. It can be safe, but I mean, they have levels of it. And let's see what response we get from the experts and I hope you can be present here in October when we have the meeting, if it's possible.
Depends on the day.
First Wednesday. First Wednesday of the month.
I'm going to be on from 10th to 13th.
October 1st.
And just make it
It'll
up.
be October 1st. October 1st. And thank you for being here. But like I said, you know, it only takes one person, one concerned citizen, for us to conduct, you know, ourselves here as members of the city council to have transparency. And it's important for us too, that everybody feels comfortable with this. And Mr. Yamamoto, thank you for doing this.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Dilly, what we'll do is, we'll wait then and place it on the agenda for discussion, and I don't think we need to do action item, it's just discussion for next meeting.
It's agendized for discussion and given the,
But, yeah,
yeah.
and then Mr. Agostini will come back with his votes.
Get his phone number so you call
Yeah.
him.
Yes. Yeah. Joe, Agostini.
Sir.
Yeah, Mr. Machado said that we need some of those radiation badges that you guys have.
Is that, so,
We know exactly
the
what we
radiation
have.
that comes out of the city manager, is that what you're saying?
Are you feeling it, Joe?
Yeah, I feel the vibe.
Thank you very much. Consent agenda, item number 6. We're gonna be conducting consent agenda from A through G. Thank you very much. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Orders, 7. A, consideration possible action of order 2014-09-073.
So moved, Mr. Mayor. Second?
Discussion. Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it.
I did have one point of discussion.
It's too late, Mr.
No, do
President.
it really quick. I think we did a great job on this.
Oh, no, you did do a
No,
great
no,
job.
we collectively, I think
Yeah,
our
yeah.
community really came together and we got a great turnout in terms of voting support of home rule. That's notable. Anyway.
Thank you, Mr. Dilly. B, consideration possible action of order 2014-09-074.
Second?
Discussion. Yes, go ahead.
Could you just read what what it is with the public knows? Also, like on the first one, Mr. Dilly said it was an home rule.
Yes, go ahead, Mr. Dilly. You opened it up for discussion. Go ahead.
The Honorable Mr. Dillon.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
Gosh. I'll send you a thank you card, Joe.
Please.
I will. B is, well, A was the Proposition 404 home rule, and that was a landslide victory in support of home rule. Carries us for another 4 years, allowing the control to be local with our elected officials on the budget year to year. That was very important for us. Item B is a canvassing of votes from the primary election in regards to the 3 council member seats open and the mayor seat open for election. And that's what's before you tonight.
Okay. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. C, consideration possible action of order 2014-09-075.
So moved, Mayor. Second?
Discussion?
Could we read that too? Just the audience know what it's about.
I think it's probably noteworthy. I mean, this is a change order on the Gold Hill project, the paving project. It's not only a value-added change order, but it's also authorizing additional expenditures of the overweight monies to complete that section of the road in between the bridge and where we left it, or where we started the project. As you recall, we didn't end up going on that portion of the road because we had some hurdles with the UP. And so, we've talked with, we've talked with stakeholders on the overweight stuff, the Fresh Post Association, just to keep them in the loop so it wasn't a big issue. And everybody seems to be on board to finish this project and do it right. We do believe that every dollar of this change order that you're considering is what we would consider as staff to be value added to the project, and I'm happy to have staff get up. Alejandro, I guess at this point, I don't see, oh, there, Juan's right there, sorry. We can have Juan come up and actually detail for you what that change order consists of. It's up to you, but we consider it to be value added.
No.
Well,
Go ahead.
I only have a question there. I don't know if that's one that includes like a shoulder work there by the Harrison warehouse?
Huh?
Is that the one? Yeah.
Yeah,
Let's go.
up Gold Hill.
But it's just right after the train deal, you see how well it wasn't fixed.
Yeah, and then you turn in, then you just start going up the hill.
Correct.
But I'm just asking, I just wanted to ask now, it seems like that's not part of the road. When you look at the picture that they have, it's just that strip there in front. And I just want to know, is that part of the city, or is that actually
Is that-
been surveyed? Or?
Everything that we paved was part of our right-of-way.
Right. But this is on the site, it's kind of more towards the entrance of Harrison. where-
That's one big entrance, right, for
Yeah.
Harrison, there's actually no delineation. Pretty soon there's going to be, we're gonna put Jersey barriers up to better delineate city road from private property. But because of the truck movement in that area, that pavement becomes critical for that radius coming around that corner. Because we mix truck traffic with pedestrians that live in the Monte Vista subdivision. That radius and the clearance of those big trucks was really kind of a safety issue, which is why there was pavement there before. So when we just went to do the road, we recognized that part of our right-of-way was also paved and in really bad condition. And so we just decided, since we had the contractor there, to go ahead and make that all uniform with new pavement. And we'll put Jersey barriers there as part of these value-added improvements.
But we're okay legally, we're not paving outside of the city property.
No, sir. What we paved was within our established right-of-way. No private property was paved on.
Okay, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Item D, I am pulling it from the agenda. We're going to public hearing. 8, number 1, public hearing amendments to section 708 of the City of Nogales Development Standard Code.
Mr. Mayor, this is required
Yes.
in order to move forward with the changes that were presented to you during your study session, both tonight and a month ago. We need to open the public hearing, allow comment. If there's no comment, we can close that public hearing, and then further down under ordinances, you'll be asked to consider action on that ordinance change.
Is there anybody that wants to speak on this public hearing right now?
This is on
On section 708, the Sound Development Code. On the study session that we had.
So,
Okay?
So there being no comment.
There being no comment, we'll be closing the public hearing. Item number 9, ordinances. A, consideration possible action of ordinance O 2014-09-001.
So move. Second.
Discussion. Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it.
If it's unanimous?
Yes.
And then if we can have a motion to waive the second reading section.
Vice Mayor?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I move that we waive the second hearing.
Second reading.
Second
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 reading.
reading on ordinance number 02014-09-001.
Second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Item number 10, executive session. We'll be going into executive session.
Yeah, 2 minutes.
We're coming in from executive session. Item number 2. Yes. Yes, item number 2.
10-2.
Okay, 10-2. Consideration and possible action of order 2014-09-077.
So move, Mayor.
Second.
Discussion, hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Future agenda items? No, Mr. Julian, I'm just joking. City manager report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. I will be brief. Just to give you a heads up, coming down the pipeline, probably get you something at your October meeting. In working with Dennis Smith, MAG director, and the other COGs and MPOs. They thought processing through your dais and your colleagues' dais across the state, a supportive resolution for continuing the efforts by ADOT on the ultimate improvements to SR 189 would be helpful to keeping the political attention there. So I know a draft resolution has been put together, working on some final details of it, but we'll have that in front of you at your October meeting. And hopefully that'll keep the message strong to ADOT in getting funding put together. I did want you to know that we had a very good update meeting from ADOT. It was an internal meeting, and it's in regards to SR 189. The Board of Transportation Board found some monies over the next year or two to move the project back into the DCR type track, the design concept report. If you recall, the project was in a DCR track and then got moved out because federal regulations dictate that if the state has a project in that particular path, that design concept path, they have to have monies earmarked for construction. ADOT didn't have monies earmarked for design or construction, so they had to take it out of that, and it gave us probably an 18-month lull in the process, where not a whole lot of progress happened, and they put it into something called a Pell process. Anyway, it's back into the DCR process because the Board of Transportation found some monies to put into design. So they're expecting that they're gonna have the DCR completed by December of this year. And they're gonna start moving forward with stakeholder meetings again. They heard your resolution loud and clear way back when in 2011 when you passed that resolution in support of Alternative 1. So what they've done is they've created options for Alternative 1, and that's what they're going to be bringing forward to all the stakeholders over the probably next 8 or so months.
This is MAG?
No. This is ADOT.
ADOT.
Oh, okay.
ADOT in regards to SR 189. There's continued movement with all the COGs and trying to find different ways to get the money advanced to make construction happen in this 5-year tip for ADOT instead of having it done the second 5-year tip. Right now it's currently scheduled for the year 2022. Okay, so just an update on that. In fact, tomorrow is a stakeholder meeting. Pretty soon after they get through some of the stakeholder meetings, they're gonna go public. And that's where they'll have like what they did up at the hotels maybe a year ago. But they're not at that point yet. After September 18th, you'll be approached by staff to get your iPads turned into MIS so that they can give there's a big update coming through Apple, and so they'll get your iPads updated and make sure that it's current with all those updates. So be expecting a call sometime after September 18th, okay? And then finally, just as a reminder, I will be out of town. Friday is a travel day, but next week is the International City Managers Conference, annual conference. And so I'll be out, but John will be here and I'll be available on the phone. You wanna go?
Yeah.
Anyway, I'd be happy to answer any questions if you have any.
You know, one thing, tomorrow the Speaker of the House, when I meet with him, maybe it's good that we discuss some help from them also when in reference to SR 189.
Perfect. When are you meeting with him?
Well, he's coming in tomorrow. We're gonna talk
He'll
about.
be at the
Yeah, he's coming in, and well, we're gonna meet about the travel to Mexico City and the office in Mexico City for tourism and economic development, and then maybe we can discuss that too to see and help us out.
Let me know. I'd be happy to come in
Okay.
and we can talk to him about that.
All right.
The International City Managers Conference is really important and necessary for me to be able to maintain my credentialed manager status, which I think is a huge boon to Nogales, to be able to tout that you have that type of city manager. So I appreciate the support of being able to do that.
Thank you very much, Mr. Dillon. Future agenda items, members of the city council?
I got one.
Yes.
Update on the amphitheater at.
Oh, okay. Have they done anything on that, Mr. Dillon?
Marcel's out of the office this week. I haven't been able to get an update on that. John, have you heard anything?
No,
Were they gonna do a design, a real one?
I think so.
All right, keep it above the belt. Come on. I was told that staff took that drawing and gave it to the consultant.
No, that's probably at the Pimeria Alta Historical Society. That's probably over there being,
We're gonna take it from the 80% it was up to the 90.
Thank you, John.
that's a jump on the design concept on this.
That's right.
Okay, so.
Update on that?
80 to 90 at 1%.
Perfect, this means adjourned.